Mario is one of the most recognizable characters ever, but would you recognize him if he looked like this? Or how about this? You see, Mario's design hasn't been entirely consistent over the last 40 years. When he was first created, Mario looked a lot older. I mean, this guy looks completely different from the Mario we know now. So today, I'll explain how that original design came to be, and why Nintendo decided to change it. Here's why Mario doesn't look like he used to. Mario is a character that was never meant to exist. As the famous story goes, when Nintendo released the arcade game Radar Scope, it wasn't the success they hoped for. So they asked their employees to come up with ideas for a replacement game. And one employee who submitted ideas was Shigeru Miyamoto, at the time a new graphic designer at the company. Since Nintendo held the video game rights to the classic cartoon series Popeye, Miyamoto came up with 5 Popeye-themed game ideas. Now, if you've never seen a Popeye cartoon, this main character here is a sailor named Popeye. His girlfriend is called Olive Oil, and his rival is this guy here, Bluto. So, one of Miyamoto's ideas ended up in front of Nintendo's president, Hiroshi Yamauchi. And luckily for Miyamoto, Yamauchi really liked the game. The plan was for Popeye to climb up some construction beams, chasing after his kidnapped girlfriend. It's theorized that Miyamoto's idea might have been based on this episode of the Popeye cartoons, where Popeye tries to rescue Olive Oil after she sleepwalks onto a construction site. I mean, this certainly does remind you of Donkey Kong. Anyway, just as Miyamoto and his team of developers were about to get started on their Popeye arcade game, they received bad news. Miyamoto explained, "While I can't recall exactly why it was, we were unable to use Popeye in that title. It really felt like the ladder had been pulled out from under us, so to speak." So, Nintendo lost the rights to Popeye, and Miyamoto couldn't make his Popeye game. Or could he? "We were at a loss as to how to proceed," Miyamoto explained. "Then we thought, why not come up with our own original character?" And just like that, development on the game picked up again, with Miyamoto tweaking the Popeye characters into brand new characters of his own. Bluto the Kidnapper became Donkey Kong the Gorilla, and Olive Oil, the damsel in distress, became Lady, later known as Pauline. But the star of the show, Popeye, well, that was the biggest question mark of all. Just who should the main character of this new game be? Well, Miyamoto only had a tiny grid of pixels to work with, so every single pixel had to count. He explained, "We had to draw Mario as a small character, and at the same time, we had to make him look human. To do that, we needed to draw a distinctive feature for him, such as giving him a big nose. We gave him a moustache so we didn't have to draw a mouth." The rest of this new character's appearance followed similar logic. Big, wide arms to stand out against the game's background. A hat so they didn't have to worry about animating hair. And overalls too. I'll let Miyamoto explain. When Mario is running, he moves his arms, but in order to make that movement easier to see, I thought it would be best to make his arms and his body different colors. So I wondered whether there was a type of outfit which was like that. And the outfit Miyamoto thought of was overalls. And the final result was this. A simple, pixelated image of a character that Miyamoto called Jumpman. After the pixel art was done, Miyamoto drew a final image of how he imagined this Jumpman character should look. His sketch was then passed off to an illustrator, who polished it up into this final design, featuring Jumpman alongside Donkey Kong and Lady. You can see that Jumpman looks kind of strange here. He's very short, which reflects his short, stubby pixel art. His moustache is big and curly, and he's got clumps of hair emerging from underneath his hat. The basic DNA of the Mario that we know and love is here, but this guy looks more like Mario's second cousin or something. So, this was the first image of Jumpman, the main character from Donkey Kong. Before long, this new arcade game was shipped off to Nintendo of America, where a few changes were made to the game. First off, Jumpman's name was changed to Mario, named after Mario Segale, the manager of Nintendo's American warehouse. And next, more art was created for Donkey Kong. To be clear, Miyamoto's drawings were still used on the arcade cabinet, but Nintendo of America wanted an American illustrator to create a flyer to promote the game. First, they asked Lou Brooks to do it, as he was one of the most famous American illustrators at the time, but he told Nintendo that he was busy. However, he did have a suggestion. Why didn't they ask Xavier Leslie Kabaga instead? Now, if you've not heard of Kabaga, he's a really famous comic artist who worked on a bunch of cartoons from the same era as Popeye. That's right, things somehow come all the way back to Popeye. So, here's the illustration that Kabaga drew for the game's flyer. As you can see, Mario looks kind of different from Miyamoto's design. He's still wearing his trademark overalls, but he's taller, skinnier, and that messy hair from before has been replaced with sideburns. He's also wearing a pair of white gloves, which later became a key part of Mario's design. So, in 1981, these three pieces of art defined how millions of people saw Mario, a kind of messy-haired, middle-aged carpenter guy. But over the next few years, that began to change. Shigeru Miyamoto's next arcade game was Donkey Kong Jr., and the pixel art of Mario in this new game looks almost identical to that from the original Donkey Kong. But if you look at the game's cabinet, it's a different story. Miyamoto completely redesigned Mario, making him much younger looking. He looks like a character you'd find in a comic book or shonen manga of the 80s. Gon is the middle-aged man from the original Donkey Kong. These new designs stuck around in Miyamoto's next game too, Mario Bros, where both Mario and Luigi look, again, pretty cartoon-like. Oh, and between those two games, Nintendo of America did actually produce one more poster, which is kind of in the middle of Miyamoto's two different styles. Going forward though, Miyamoto seemed intent on carrying forward his cartoon style. And that's where we reach an important milestone in Mario's changing design, Super Mario Bros. You see, up until this moment, a defining characteristic of Mario had been his height, or rather, his lack thereof. He was this short little guy hopping around the sewers. But after the success of Donkey Kong and Mario Bros, many other companies had created games that were somewhat similar. Miyamoto thought to himself, right, I'm not gonna let those other games top us. And so he began working on the ultimate Mario game. Up until this point, Mario had been all about jumping, so that would be the core of Miyamoto's new game. He explained, "We started off by doing tests to see how it would feel for the player to control a large character, double the size of Mario. As it felt really good, we continued to develop the idea." And this is where the now iconic look of Mario from Super Mario Bros. Got its start. Miyamoto doubled Mario's height and created a more detailed version of the Mario that players had grown to know and love. He kept the basics of what made Mario Mario, his overalls, his big nose, his moustache and hat, but essentially made him double as tall. And when the developers tried controlling this new, big Mario, they found it really fun. So fun, in fact, that they considered ditching Mario's smaller design entirely. In the end, they decided to keep both, having Mario grow in size after eating a mushroom. But that's just the pixel art, because as Super Mario Bros. Neared completion, it was time to create an illustration for the game's box. According to Miyamoto, "Ever since we made Donkey Kong, I have made many rough sketches of Mario in pencil, and then given them to an external illustrator to polish up. When we came out with Super Mario Bros., I was thinking about asking a professional manga artist or a well-known illustrator to do the art, but time was running out, so I drew the original art for the package myself." And so, Miyamoto began sketching out the final designs of the game's main characters, including Mario. And here is the final illustration. It's a big change from the last design Miyamoto drew up. This new iteration of Mario is more detailed, with bright blue eyes, an expressive grin on his face, brown sideburns, and an M on his cap. And that very same year, Mario's design took one more leap forward. And for the first time in Mario's history, it wasn't because of Shigeru Miyamoto. In 1985, Nintendo hired legendary animator Yoichi Kotabe. Kotobe is truly an animation great, having worked on anime like Heidi, Girl of the Alps, Sally the Witch, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and many, many more. He was a friend of Hayao Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli creator behind Totoro and Spirited Away. And in 1985, he was scouted to work at Nintendo in order to improve some of the art and animations of Nintendo's games. One of his first projects was taking Shigeru Miyamoto's designs for the Mario characters and refining them a little. And of course, the most important design of them all was Mario himself. In the words of Yoichi Kotabe, "When I went to draw Mario, that one package illustration was all I had to go by. Then I heard Miyamoto-san was the artist, so I asked him all sorts of questions. Is this face okay? Is he like this?" In the end, Kotabe didn't change Mario dramatically, but he made a lot of small changes to the characters' features, their size, position, and shape, which resulted in this much more polished final design. Miyamoto was really pleased with this illustration, so much so that he used it as the basis for the pixel art of Mario in his later appearances. Plus, Kotabe continued illustrating Mario for the Mario games that followed. But then, in 1996, Mario's design changed one last time. The Nintendo 64 was Nintendo's big leap from 2D to 3D gaming, and their flagship game was Super Mario 64, the first ever 3D Super Mario game. This meant the developers had a lot of figuring out to do. How does one turn a 2D platformer into something that uses 3 dimensions? Well, for one, they now had to create 3D models of their characters and levels instead of the simpler 2D sprites from before. And for Mario, there was one man in charge of creating this model, Yoshiaki Koizumi. He explained, "I created the Mario motion model and a few test textures." Now, he says that as if it was easy, but in reality, creating the 3D model for Mario took a huge amount of work. He worked together with Yoichi Kotabe to adapt his design into 3D. Kotabe even drew up a chart of how his Mario design would look from different angles. And after a lot of work, here is what Yoshiaki Koizumi came up with. Now, of course, due to the Nintendo 64's limited resources, Koizumi's Mario model doesn't quite look the same as Kotabe's designs. For one, it's a lot blockier. But I think of this Mario as the last major evolution of this one character's design. If you look at what Mario looks like on the front of Mario 64's box, where technological resources weren't so limited, this Mario here looks remarkably similar to pictures of Mario from the last few years. This Mario design was here to stay. So, yes, in the last 25 years, Nintendo might have changed Mario's skin color a little, jogged his eyes around a tad, and even experimented with using more realistic textures. But at its core, Mario's design has remained remarkably consistent over the last 20 years, even in the upcoming Mario movie, which was animated by a studio on the other side of the world from Nintendo. Mario's design is pretty similar to his design from the games. And I think that tells you something. That while Miyamoto and Nintendo might have had to fiddle around and experiment a little to land on their final design, they soon struck upon something great. Something perfect that didn't need any tweaks or changes or alterations. This Mario design is extremely iconic, and I can't imagine it ever changing again. Hey, thank you so much for watching to the end. This video was a bit of an odyssey to make and edit, but I'm really pleased with how it turned out, so I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. And as always, I shall see you in the next video. Bye!